Once again, I am Doc Rotten, and this is Horror News Radio, the official Gruesome Magazine podcast. Back with me again this week are the scariest, goriest, bloodiest co-hosts on the net, and that means, that's right, award-winning filmmaker Christopher G. Moore. Christopher, how you doing, bud?
Boo! I'm a ghost in the forever home. Oh, good.
Yes, and the gravity wells and all that. Yeah, we are. This is going to be exciting. We've been trying to get the crew together to cover The Haunting of Bly Manor, a 9-episode series on Netflix that debuted October 9th. And, well, man, just much like in the show, time just wouldn't work out for us. So, Christopher, it's you and I, we're going to get into this, and we're going to give our thoughts on The Haunting of Bly Manor. Of course, this is the follow-up of The Haunting of Hill House from Mike Flanagan. And this is going to be interesting. We were looking forward to this as soon as they announced it. And we've been, as soon as we saw the trailer, we've been looking forward to seeing it this fall. And here it is, this October, the Halloween season. You've been looking forward to this one, right, Christopher?
Oh, I mean, I really enjoyed the first season a lot. So I was definitely looking forward to this, to seeing them tell a different story, having some of the cast members return to play different characters in this iteration. So yeah, I was really excited about it. And I think for some people it's a different type of story to some degree, even though it still involves ghosts. And so, but it's still a really great story, despite it, being a totally different path they took with the storyline this time around.
Yep, that's absolutely right. All right, so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to give our first impressions of the series as a whole. We're going to talk about it. We're going to try to be spoiler-free, if at all possible. That's going to be hard, but we're going to try, because we're going to do a spoilery episode later in the week. So look for that coming your way. It's going to be a fun one. And then, after we talk about it, we're going to give our final thoughts, our score, and our favorite scene from the entire series. Wow, is that going to be difficult? But that's what you want to stick around for. But what are we talking about tonight? We are talking about The Haunting of Bly Manor on Netflix. October 9th is when it debuted, 9 episodes long. Synopsis is, after an au pair's tragic death, Henry hires a young American nanny to take care of his orphaned niece and nephew who reside at Bly Manor, with Chef Owen, groundskeeper Jamie, and housekeeper Mrs. Grose. It's created by Mike Flanagan, based on the works of Henry James, and the cast includes Victoria Pedretti, Oliver Jackson-Cohen, Amelia Eve, Tanaya Miller, Rahul Kohli, Tahira Sheriff, Amelia Bay Smith, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, Henry Thomas, yay, and Carla Bacchino, which I don't think we knew until the first episode. Was a big surprise. So a lot of and there's others, in smaller roles, familiar cast members from the first season, and all of them are absolutely fantastic. But I don't want to get ahead of things. So, Christopher, why don't you start things off and let us know what your first impression of the entire 9 episodes is. And if you want to point out one, go for it.
Well, yeah, I think this is another great story in the Haunting series. I think it definitely goes in different direction. I think Flanagan had said somewhere that he thought this is going to be much more scarier than the first season. And I'm sorry, that's definitely not the case. It definitely has a few scares, but it's definitely more gothic horror, gothic romance than it is, The Conjuring or Poltergeist or Haunting of Hill House, for that matter. And I think that's probably what people weren't really expecting. I think as the first episode, I was getting a little bit worried just how it started, because I wasn't really sure. But I think once we delve into the characters and we get to know these characters, you really get to where you care about these characters and their situations. I think the whole thing that Danny sees is kind of creepy.
Yes,
he's popping up. And then there's a few other really great scares, but it is about the characters. And I think I think there's one piece of dialogue where it says, all love stories are ghost stories. And I think that is a great embodiment of what this new season is, because there are certain ghosts that are treated as ghosts, but they're more of a ghost of relationships with the past and that kind of thing. That where they almost have PTSD over past relationships, or they've had mental breaks that are sort of a variation of a ghost as well, which is kind of cool. So you have mental ghosts and you have real ghosts, and then we have there's like one episode that's very without being spoilers, it's very reminiscent of the broke neck lady episode. But yeah, I mean, and then I think one of the things that really I paid attention to this time was the visual storytelling. The way that they frame certain shots, there's a lot of really wonderful shots where it's very wide shots. And because we have the young girl who has like this little dollhouse that she has all these different characters in, the way they frame that, you feel like these people are walking almost like through a dollhouse. So they're dolls themselves. There's also a lot of those split diopter type shots, which many years ago we talked about in Hannibal, where it's like a split lens in the camera that allows you to have something very closer up to the camera in focus, as well as something way in the back in focus at the same time. So there's some really cool shots there, because then you have like a character who's talking to somebody closer to the camera, and then you have like maybe one of the kids in the background. And also there's a lot of what they call match cut editing, where we will be like a cool transition between characters, when you'll have like, it'll be like a flashback or flash forward for one character, or from one scene to another, where they have a certain characters that are walking a certain way or standing a certain way or framed a certain way. And we go into another scene, whether it be, something happening elsewhere in the house or something that happened many years ago. So yeah, there's some really cool filmmaking to sort of pull off the storytelling. But I think the strength of this series, as well as the strength of the past series, is the actors. I think these kids are really wonderful. I think everybody, after watching it, we're all saying like, this is perfectly splendid.
Yes.
I've heard about everybody saying that, where I may have put it in my vernacular at some point. And then just some of the scenes, there's a lot of heart-wrenching scenes. I mean, I know as we get towards the end, I was having to pull out the tissue box, because I was crying like a little baby. Because there's a lot of, the gothic romance really plays into this, to where you see the heartbreak in these type of characters. Now, at the same time, when it comes to Quint, his relationship with Miss Jessel, I hate that character. I think that's the only thing that I didn't like about the series. I didn't really believe the relationship that he had with Miss Jessel.
Bex.
I really didn't. That kind of bothered me a lot, and because I really didn't see what she saw in him, because he just seemed like an asshole the whole time. Maybe the girls like the bad boys, I guess, but
yeah, they do. Oh.
But I'll say Henry Thomas, is it Henry Thomas Jr.?
Henry Thomas is fantastic.
Yeah, he is amazing, and this series really made me realize how good of an actor he is, because I think seems always very easy for someone who's a British actor or Irish actor or whatever to pull off a perfect American accent, but it always seems very hard for Americans to pull off British accents, and he does it really brilliantly, to where I was on every word. I was like, wow, man,
is he actually like British? Yeah,
I was like, he's really doing a great job. And then just how he has to sort of do another type of character that was kind of cool as well. So there's a lot of creepy moments that made me jump. And this is also one of those things to where I was trying to look for like the little ghosts in the background, and I didn't really see them. And then I watched like one of these videos. I'm like, holy crap, there's ghosts all through this in the background, just like everywhere. The first season. And I just didn't. You don't really notice it because it's it's in the background, but once you know that, now you cannot see it. Is it can't not see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't miss it.
Yeah, you can't miss it. So yeah, I think this is definitely an actor showcase. I think Danny is the real heart of this series. That character, I really love the relationship that happens later in the season with her, where she's having to get over a certain situation. Also, I'm a sucker for anything 80s. So when we have like the 80s kind of stuff really made me kind of happy seeing that in a different perspective, so yeah, I really love this series. I think it's really great. I think you just have to realize it's not on the level of Haunting Hill, where there was just so many WTF moments, kind of shocking horror moments that kind of gave me the chills. There are elements that are creepy. There are elements that make you jump, but I didn't really. And of course, the lady in the lake is very.
Oh gosh! Yes.
When she shows up, there's some really scary moments, but it didn't hit me like the tall man with the hat. It didn't really hit me like some of those ghosts in the first season that were just purely frightening. But yeah, I think it's a really wonderful series. Some great character work, and another great story, and just some of the dialogue pieces, especially how they integrate dialogue and pieces of elements from the Hill House series into this as well. That if you're a big fan of that, you may pay attention or may not remember certain things, how they kind of tie those elements in.
Yeah, they're sometimes they're playing with the structure, and other times maybe they're playing a little too close. Like you mentioned, one episode is very much reminiscent of the Betneck lady, and there's another
lady, yeah.
There's another one that also feels like it in a different way, but at the same time, it feels appropriate for the story. So I give it a pass. It didn't bother me. And then there are lines and phrases that are directly coming from that, like the Forever House and the Gravity Well, both of them.
Well,
so, yeah. So okay. So for me, it is not as good or scary as The Haunting of Hill House. The Haunting of Hill House is brilliant. It's perfect, nearly. And this one isn't as strong, but that doesn't mean it isn't good. It's actually great. It is a fantastic 9 episodes, and I would recommend everybody watching them if you're a horror fan. It is more of a gothic romance, and it actually gives it permission to be so in the very final episode. And it kind of gives the whole thing a break, and in a very smart way that that you'll have trouble disagreeing with them. I agree. The first episode had me a little nervous. I was like, I don't know if this is what I want, but I don't hate it, right? And then every episode got better and better and better. And by the 5th episode for me was sealed the deal. The 5th episode is remarkable, and the next couple episodes are equally so. The 8th, I will say, the 8th episode, you will need to be a little more patient with it, because some people will get turned off by the first 10 minutes of it, might not be into what they do there. Be patient, because it pays off, and it becomes one of the most important episodes of the season in a lot of ways. And it's probably the most gothic of the episodes in that respect. And it also features Katie Siegel, right? So
Mike Flanagan's wife.
Yes, and she does a great job as Viola. And there's another actress that we like, Alex Esso, excuse me, that we talk about her indie horror work quite a bit, and she's here as Charlotte Wingrave, and she's actually quite good, quite good.
Well, that whole episode it's a period piece. Even parts of it are in black and white, and it's really well crafted. That sort of like you kind of wonder, like, where is this going?
And also, it's one of the best scares of the entire season.
Oh my god, I literally almost fell off my couch. It scared the shit out of me. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So for me, by the end of it, I was thrilled. I really loved it. I gobbled it up. It was hard to turn it off. You know, I couldn't watch all 9 episodes in one sitting. That was impossible for me. But, you know, just watching a couple and having turned it off to wait for the next night was like, I really don't. Should I stay up to 2 o'clock in the morning and watch more? I don't know. I can't. But Amelia Eve as Jamie, the gardener, if you will, the caretaker, she quite possibly may have stolen the entire season. She is really good. Tanaya Miller as Mrs. Grose is also very good. And the chemistry she has with Rahul Kohli, who plays Owen, is might be one of the most palpable romances on TV in a while. That, you know, it's one of those will they or won't they kind of romances, you know, that, you know, you think Friends, right? You know, and once they do it, you know, it's all over. But this one, you know, has a supernatural twist to it, and but you root for those characters. Like, oh man, yes, when they're at a camp, they're all at like doing marshmallows right out on the fire one night, and bonfire, and he's talking about wanting to escape and go to France, and you're like, yeah, do it, go, you guys need to go to France and be together, this is perfect, do it, listen to him. And I guess the point I'm getting to here, Christopher, is mirroring what you were saying, is that because you're in with all these characters, I mean, you really get attached to most all of them. I will say there are exceptions, like you're saying. Maybe Peter Quint is a little too much of an asshole. I mean, he is the bad guy. He is the villain. But the rest of them, you feel so strongly for them that when things happen, when the twists come and the events come and the inevitable comes, it is quite heartbreaking. It is quite heartbreaking, and it tugs at your, it's a tearjerkers. You know, we were saying gravity well, and there's literally a well in this as well that isn't the gravity well, but a particular scene there toward the end is just like, oh my God, it would be the most horrible thing ever to have to find. And there are strong visuals. There are the ghosties. If you pay attention, some of the ghosties will freak you out. Some of them will freak you out. Some of them are in your face, right? Especially the glasses guy that you see quite a bit.
The plague doctor?
Well, the plague doctor.
The glasses doctor. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
The plague doctor will keep you out as well. But and the doll-faced boy, there are a lot of ghosts in here, and they are all creepy. And if you notice them, they'll creep you out. But it really isn't about that in what you're going to enjoy, right? It is the actors and the characters, and they are so strong.
Well, and I think that's always. I know I keep hammering it home, but I think some of the best horror are those where you really have characters that you care about. So when these horrible things happen, you care about their situation, you know? And, you know, I think I've been watching a few interviews with some of the cast, and they were talking about like one of their most fun parts was there's the kitchen scene where they're all tasting the batter and they're trying to decide which batter, you know, if it needs to have this added, vanilla, if it needs like strawberry added or something like that. And you can sort of see this almost family unit. It's although they were talking about actually in that scene, the guy who plays Owen doesn't eat sugar, and so they had to shoot it so many times. So by the end of that scene, he was like all hopped up on sugar. But yeah, you love these characters and you hate the situations they're in. I mean, Danny is always like 1 second away from having like a panic attack. While at the same time, she's got to act like everything's okay, you know, and then you got these kids that are just having to deal with situations because they know a lot of the stuff that's happening in the house. You have the little boy who's at times could be almost like the kid from The Omen, where he's, you know, acting all
kidding.
Yeah, where he's, I mean, there's the whole segment that takes place in his school where it's like, it's literally almost like the Omen kid. But then you find out, you know, the reasoning behind that. And then you have the little girl, you know, has her own types of issues. But but yeah, I mean, she's so like, you know, cutesy, and you just hate these things happening to them, or the Mrs. Grose character, or, and then also you get sort of like the background stuff, you know, you get the Henry character, and you see that, you know, the reason that he's being so cold is because of a, you know, lost love, you know. So you have all these things that are sort of all these people who've been like hurt by certain situations and how they're having to deal with it, and that kind of grief, and how that also the horror aspect preys on that. Because even the whole Lady of the Lake thing, there's a whole, you know, there's a heartbreak there. That's the reason the horror has happened out of that heartbreak of loss, you know, and how not only the loss of people, but the loss of trust with people, you know, and how all she wants is her kid. And so, you know, so yeah, there's so many wonderful things, how it has all these things that was it, C. Robert Cargill, who co-wrote Doctor Strange, and he wrote Sinister. He wrote a really interesting screenwriting tip where he's like, the best horror films are where you can take the horror out and it would still be a great dramatic piece. You know, it'd still have great characters, and that would still be an interesting story you'd want to see. And it shouldn't be always about that. So, and that's what this is, you know, sometimes the ghosts could be more of a decoration around the specific situations these people are dealing with, when it becomes to characters, when it becomes to loss of life, when it becomes to loss of love. And that's always very interesting. It should all come down to how you know, having great character work. And this has always been the strength of Flanagan stuff in general. He does a really great job with characters, and putting them in these type of situations where it amps up those emotions. Yeah. And even though if this doesn't click as much as Hill House did, which I think is just pure perfection, in my opinion, the first season, this still has those elements of that. It just, there's just a few, you know, problems here and there that kind of don't allow it to be on that same level, but at the same time, it is telling a different type of story that makes it maybe not flow as much because of that.
Yeah. I think the only problem is that it's just a comparison. Like if we didn't have that comparison in front of us, I think our reaction would be a lot, you know, across the board, not only us, but everybody else would be a lot stronger.
Probably, but I think I'd still have problems with certain characters, even if I hadn't seen Haunting in Hill House. I'd still have problems with certain characters in this. I don't really have any problems with any characters in the first season as I did with the Quint character.
I didn't have as big a problem with Peter Quint, but I do understand what you're saying. Yeah, the romance he has with Rebecca, is he keeps calling her Bex, so that's what I call her, as Bex. But it isn't as strong, right? It doesn't have that anchor of authenticity as like many of the other characters in this very movie, in this very TV series do. But at the same time, don't look past this one. Don't let this one slip by just because you're hearing these comparisons, and you're a big fan of Hill House. Watch this movie. Watch it. This series is worth watching.
It's a different beast, and I think you have to take it as that. You know, it's you know, like a lot of things, you can't always it's like comparing one Guillermo del Toro film with the other. You know, they're all different types of stories, and you can't. They're almost different type of subgenres sometimes, and this is what this is. It's a different story that's not on that level of scariness that Hill House was, but it still has that same amount of emotional content and great character work that made the first season so great.
Yeah, and it makes its case. It states it pretty quickly in the series. Not necessarily with the first episode, but by the time you get into the next couple, you're going to kind of settle into what the show is actually about, and then it ramps up from there, and it's really worth it. But let's talk about these two kids real quick. Amelia Bay Smith plays Flora, the younger sister, and then Benjamin Evan Ainsworth plays Miles, the older brother. Now these are the kids that are, you know, turn of the screw, right? The turning, if you remember that version of it.
Let's not bring that up. Somebody had mentioned that this is just a ripoff of The Turning, and I just want to like
no, it's
slap some sense into those people. Please, let's not put that in the same sentence. The Turning is the Turding, as I call it, is not on the same level as this.
Yeah, but that story is the crux of the influence of this. There are other stories we woven into it, and Miles and Flora, of course, are a big part of that. And these kids do a great job. There's, like you were saying, like the Omen, when that aspect of Miles comes out, Benjamin Aylesworth, he literally does. He's literally more than one character. He's literally his whole acting technique changes, and for a kid, it's really amazing that he achieves this. That they got that out of him. You wouldn't think, right? A lot of times it's hard enough to get the kid not to be just themselves, right? But you really feel a shift. There's a scene where he comes up to Danny and like just brushes her hair back over her ear, and it's like there's something really wrong with this kid.
Well, yeah, it's like, oh, this is crossing into a weird place, and it's even very comfortable just seeing him, which I'm not sure you can get away with that on regular television, where he's like trying to smoke and but yeah, I mean, it goes into really dark stuff with the whole school thing. Just the stuff he does just seems when I was first watching it, I was like, is he demonic? What is going on here? Although something to pay attention to, which I'd read somewhere, this may play into the ghost thing that we're doing later, but if you notice the scene where he's in the person who's over the school in their office, there's two priests to the right that when they cut back, you don't see the priests on that left side.
Oh, really?
So I'm wondering if two of those priests might be ghosts as well.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't be at the house.
No, but there might be ghosts. I mean, there might be ghosts in other places. So,
yeah. Oh man, what else do we want to talk about? I mean, really, you didn't like Peter Quint, but Oliver Jackson-Cohen did a great job.
I thought he did a great job. I think I had what we call Mad's marble mouth disease.
No.
Where there was parts where some of the characters, their accents were so heavy that I had to start putting on subtitles I had to like go back and watch it with subtitles to understand what they said. But yeah, I thought he did a great job. I think, I guess I kind of wish his character was a little bit more delineated when it comes to other people noticing his evilness as opposed to the girl. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because then I would have believed that relationship. But I think he did a great job. I mean, there's definitely a part where you see a flashback to him and his mom.
Yeah,
that's really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You do have this aspect of Groundhog Day meets Ghosts, where these people sort of see things that have happened in the past and that kind of thing. That
they call it being tucked away, and
being tucked away.
That's not a spoiler.
No, it's not. I'm trying to be less spoilers, but I'm just saying that like you get to see sort of flashbacks, in the same way you always hear about like ghosts or like repeating what they, in real life they supposedly ghosts.
It's not unfair to say that everybody gets a flashback in this.
Yes,
because we do kind of stick to the formula where we go through, character centric. It's not quite as singled out all the time. I mean, there are episodes that are like the 5th and 6th episode are definitely right, and then there's a Danny episode, and then sometimes they're shared. But yeah, everybody gets kind of these flashbacks, so that's not spoiling anything.
Yeah, although an interesting thing is like,
I
don't think this is giving anything away, but the Quint character, him dealing with his mom, who supposedly has like a substance abuse issue, that really ties into that first season where he was the person with the substance issue and how he tried to manipulate people.
True. And it represents that all these characters have such wonderful layers. Every character has is complex. yeah, it's just really wonderfully done. I mean, I would say like Henry Thompson's character is probably has the his layers are the hardest. He really puts himself in a bad place and sticks himself there because of what his brother says. And okay. So one last thing before we wrap up, Victoria Pedretti, right? First thing is I did not recognize her at first as being Nell from Hill House. I didn't recognize her at first, but once I did, I couldn't stop recognizing her. But she is wonderful in this. She plays Danny Clayton. She plays the American that comes to Bly Manor to take care of the kids, and she exhibits this. She's really smart with the kids. She's very in control of herself, but at the same time, she's also dealing with being haunted by her past. As you would in a place called the Haunting of Bly Manor. And so she's fragile. And that opens up for, unique relationships and encounters in this particular story that I thought her, she's central to the entire story. And I thought she did a wonderful job in that role.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's got to show so much. She's got to show so many levels of emotions as his character, one minute she's got to be that person who's strong for the children. The next minute, she's also got to deal with seeing these ghosts from the past haunt her, in situations that kind of throws her off. And so, yeah, she's always kind of torn, she's also got to deal with the bad 80s fashion that she has to wear.
Those pants
with the like these sort of 80s mom jeans, and it just reminded me like there was some really dumpy fashions back in the 80s that were not.
She got the big fluffy socks over top the jeans.
God, they don't look good on anybody, and I was like, how does anybody see that as being sexy or making you look good? But it's relative to that specific era.
It's accurate. I know.
It's accurate. I remember in high school, I saw girls wearing that in high school. So, but it is kind of funny seeing that fashion just being the norm. But yeah, I think that she does a great job. And also just how she's also trying to overcome those issues and develop a new relationship, which I think the way that they dealt with that is definitely the main structure of this whole series. It kind of, not to give anything away, but kind of bookends everything. And and that's where the real waterworks happens, is because of that, just seeing that, how that flourishes and how it ends. But yeah, I think that's great. Just somebody who's just trying to deal with it the best way possible, trying to find happiness despite the demons, which we're all, I guess, having to do one way or another. And you really feel for her, because she doesn't want to, she wants to do what's right. So yeah, I think she does an amazing job in this, which is definitely, she was dealing with kind of similar stuff in the first season, dealing with certain, because she was very haunted in that one as well.
She was. I would say that she does better in this season. She's actually stronger, and I would say Henry Thomas is stronger in this season as well.
Well, I think they're given more to do, I guess, because it wasn't really there. Of course, Henry, he was only like in flashbacks in the first season, and the Nell character wasn't the main. There was so many main characters to deal with that were more the primary focus. So this one, it's more her overarching storyline, even though there's other storylines we're following, but she's the main thing that we're following, her progression from the very, from the beginning of this story that's being told to the end.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. All right, let's wrap this up. Let's give our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5 for the entire season. If you want to point out one episode as being the best, that would be great information too. And of course, what scene connected the most for any given reason? Scared you, made you cry, whatever. All right, but before we do, if you're listening to this and you're enjoying this, please subscribe below. Hit the like button, hit the bell so you can be notified later when we do more episodes, like our upcoming spoiler episode later in the week. Also, leave us some comments. What did you think of the episode? What do you think of is the comparison between this one and Hill House unfair to Bly Manor? And maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't. Maybe it needed to live up to that comparison. I'd like to hear that. All right, let's do it. Christopher, you go ahead and start us off. What is your final thoughts, your score, and your favorite scene?
Let's
do it this way.
Yeah. You want to go first? Yeah, I think definitely. I think it's another great story in this series, and I'm interested to see if they're able to do more stories, the haunting stories, based on something else. But yeah, I think the strength of this series, like the strength of Hill House, was the characters, and I think it's all about finding the right actress to portray those characters. The dialogue is always great in these series. There's a really wonderful monologue where they talk about soulmates, where Jamie talks about soulmates.
Yes, the Moonflower, right?
Oh yeah, it's a really, as a filmmaker, I just see that kind of stuff. Man, I wish I could write dialogue like that, or I need to be better in how I write dialogue. Because just the way that they sort of deconstruct humanity or deconstruct love and all that good stuff, and how they delve into that, or just the simple thing of saying how all love stories are ghost stories. I think that's a wonderful way of saying, hey, this is a gothic romance. Or it's not just a haunted house film, it's a gothic romance. So yeah, I think again, the strength is in the characters. It really makes me sort of appreciate the abilities of Henry Thomas, as well as a girl who played Danny, Pedretti, I think her name is. And because you really have to have someone who's really, really willing to go there to be able to pull it off. But I think also, I think once we delve into the different stories, it's also about how you visually tell the story. And I think this has a lot of really interesting visual flourishes, whether it be the use of, like I said previously, match cuts with going from scene to scene, or just the movement of the camera. There's also sort of variations on stuff that we'd seen before, whether it's there's a variation of the Nell with the ghost floating above her in the first season, that we get sort of a similar thing with the Henry Thomas character. There's a lot of callbacks to phrases from the first season. There's like one where they're about to say the confetti line, where it's just all, and they sort of cut it off, but Flanagan actually on Twitter confirmed that that's actually what they were going for. Also, there's the door, the thing on the door in front of the house. The door knock is I think it's a line or something, which they had a lot of those in Hill House. So that already tells you something's wrong with this house. Everything from nothing bad will ever touch them again. There's a lot of there's just so many different phrases where they just like reuse certain things, or they pay tribute to what they did before, to where a lot of these there's similarities, but at the same time, they're also telling something different. So yeah, I think it's a wonderful story that's just all about, that's definitely a lot of it is about relationships and being haunted by the past, and how you deal with certain situations. And also how sometimes we repeat history and how we do things, how sometimes it's hard for us to get over how certain situations are, and how do we move on from that. And, sometimes ghosts are just us dealing with our own issues. So yeah, I think it's got some really beautiful moments. It's not on that level of perfection as the first season. It does have its scares, but it's definitely not as crazy scary as the first season was.
Yeah,
But
there's no car scene, right?
yeah, there's no, well,
It's close.
there's one that's a good jump scare, but no jump scares are going to ever be on level as the car scene from the first season. But they really pull at the heartstrings. They really, they do some really great things with the characters, to where it's on that same level of, I guess, enjoyment, but it's a totally different story, and you have to take it as that. It's saying that it's not on the same level as Hill House doesn't mean that it's not good. It's just a different story, and it does it in a different way that sometimes doesn't fire on all cylinders, but it still does a great job of telling these stories of these wonderful characters that you care about.
Perfect.
And just having some characters some of these actors play different parts that we didn't get to see them play in the first season.
Yes.
So as for a rating, I will give it a 4.25 out of 5.
Okay.
I think if they'd went about the whole Quint Miss Jessel relationship differently, I probably would give it a higher rating. But because I didn't really believe in the chemistry between them, it kind of like took the air out of some of the main storyline because of that. Because I really didn't believe why she was so infatuated with him when she's really trying to work hard to be this independent woman and trying to be something bigger in that specific era. But
because that is an important relationship, and
it is, and because I had problems with that, and I can understand having a character you don't like, but I think if he'd really tried to be a totally different person with her, as opposed to dealing with other people, because he just seemed like a very abusive partner, you know what I mean? And I just kept pissing me off, and they just kept doing everything to sort of like, so she never leaves him and that kind of thing. It's like that the abusive relationship kind of made me kind of mad to where it's like, I know people go into that type of thing, but anyway, that was the only thing that kind of like doesn't allow me to say that this isn't on the same level as Hill House. As for that's tough.
You can come up with something. I know it's too many.
I mean, I will say my favorite episode is episode 8, The Romance of Certain Old Clothes.
Nice. So I'm very happy to hear that.
I will say that because at first I wasn't sure what to think about it, but it's such an interesting story that has so many wonderful moments in it that definitely feels more like, gothic horror, a lot of those sort of gothic horror films from back in the day. It feels a lot of that. And also has one of the best scares, I think, in the whole season is in this episode. That had made me jump because I was not expecting it. And then just the whole idea of it's very interesting. And I mean, they even have like I'm trying to give anything away, but there's even an interesting thing with the painting that I love.
Oh, yes. Wasn't that cool? Yeah.
So yeah, I will say, I'm just going to say the whole episode.
That's fine. That's fine. That works.
Instead of a scene, I'll say the whole episode. I mean, although I will say that the jump scare is probably one of my favorite scenes, I guess. But I love the structure of that episode because there's also parts of it that feel very poetic, almost like somebody's reading a poem. It's like, and she walked. Yes,
the narration on there. You know how I feel about narration. I usually dislike it.
I usually don't either.
It's exquisite here.
To me, it's like a visual poem in parts of that, to where it's more so artistically separate from the other things, to where you feel like somebody's reading like a horror poem or something, like Edgar Allan Poe or something, like rap on the door, or
that's a good analogy to it. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's what stuck out to me, because I think the artistry is so spot on with that specific episode that I really loved that they could sort of venture into that area in one episode that kind of really takes us away from how all these other episodes are. So yeah, I'll say that, probably cheating, but I'll say episode 8 is probably my favorite scene.
It does mean that Danny's in the clutches of a certain ghost for like 3 episodes. Like, boom, boom, boom. Like,
Well, yeah.
Poor Danny. Okay, so for me, very similar. I'm going to give it 4.5. I'm just going to start off with that 4.5. I love this. I love this series. I love the Haunting series, and I think season 2 is incredibly strong. The Haunting of Hill House is still going to be very special to me, but I think there's a lot to like in here, and it has to do with the characters. And the more you get to know these characters, the more you fall in love with them, especially the main characters. Danny and Jamie, Mrs. Grose, Owen, and the 2 kids. Those characters, and I would even say Henry to some respect. I mean, Henry's a bit of a dick, but when you learn about why he's behaving the way he is, he becomes so much more you become more sympathetic to his situation. You understand why he's this way and what's going on, and the demons he's facing, and it makes for a compelling story. And while this isn't as scary centric, horror centric, it does have your ghosts. You have ghosts. There are ghosts in here. Don't deny it. And there's a variety of them. There's different types of ghosts. Like you said, there's a couple of them that are really demons of the mind, if you will. But they're still very much haunting our characters. So in that respect, I think we can still call them ghosts, even though they're not the supernatural ethereal ones that you would think of. And they're all interesting, from the very minute ones to the ones that are so much in our face. The ending is the ending's a bit bold for what how it's structured. It's not structured in a way that I particularly like the final episode. However, that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the hell out of it, right? I really enjoyed the message. I enjoyed the acting. I enjoyed the resolution, and the reveals that we finally get, and the full circleness of it. It really was emotional, and it was you definitely want your tissues out. You're gonna have some tears. There's gonna be some tears. But I will say that the strongest tears for me were more for Owen and Mrs. Grose. I really liked them. They really hit me. And that's gonna be my favorite scene and it might be my favorite episode as well as episode 5.
Gotcha.
I really love that episode. It's a Mrs. Grose centric episode, and I just really liked her character a lot. And of course, it has a lot of Owen in it. And there's a particular scene, flashback we get, where she meets Owen for the first time. Owen comes in to interview to be the chef, and she interviews him. And you get to, you hear about love at first sight, right? And the way they present this, and it is in a supernatural surrounding, the way this particular flashback is told. So there's that going for it as well from a horror fan. But the immediate attraction between these two characters, and it's just I just really loved how they pulled that off, right? You get it, right? You see that that there's this bond between them almost from the initial get-go. And what else I want to say about it is going to spoil stuff, so I'm going to stop there. But I really love that episode, and it really kind of turned the story sideways a little bit, and give us huge clues and huge amounts of background on what's actually happening in the house, and some of the when you see this episode, when you're done, first after you get over the WTF of it, right, you start thinking, okay, now you start. It's like puzzle pieces start raining down on the table, but instead of bouncing around, they start interlocking right there on the table as they fall. It's just like, oh, it's all coming together. You don't get all the pieces because there's still big gaps, but you'll get those later. But it starts to, we're getting more than the edges now, and I love that episode.
Oh, it is a good episode. It's got some great moments in it. By the way, the lady in the lake, the person that played that was actually a stunt person and not the person that we find out who that is. So.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is interesting because if you're dragging people around, you're gonna have to be very strong.
I will say that some of most of the scary moments, the scarier moments, I will say, involve her.
Yeah, because when she shows up, that's when you're like, oh crap, let's get out of the way.
I mean, they're the most menacing, right? I mean, because there are others and they're creepy and scary, but they're not as menacing, right? They're not as oh crap, straight up. That part of it is straight up horror movie.
Yeah, because there's like she's like Jason, because he just no stopping to her to some degree.
Yeah, there is one scene where somebody grabs something out of like a dark shadow and pulls it up to be seen and says, "Don't look like this." And I'm like, "What?"
Oh
the hell?
That just came out of nowhere. It's like, what?
I was like, what? By the way, we talked about we'll end here. We talked about Katie Siegel, who plays Viola in that flashback sequence, the episode you loved, and her sister is Perdita, and it's played by Katie Parker. Katie Parker was also from the first season, and she played. I'm going to get it here. I want to make sure I get the right one. She played Poppy Hill.
That was Poppy?
Yes.
Oh wow, I wouldn't have known that.
I wouldn't either.
I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
I wouldn't know if IMB didn't tell me.
There you go.
Yep. So there's our review for The Haunting of Bly Manor, playing on Netflix right now during this Halloween season. It's the perfect time. It's starting to it's getting brisk here in the States. You want to cuddle up with somebody close to you and watch this, binge it over a weekend. It's worth it. Lots of great characters. It's a romance, so it is it's perfect for that kind of snuggling as well, right? And it's check it out. I think both of us agree. 4.25, 4.5.
Yeah, please. Yeah, binge watch it. It's a great series.
Hill House made I think it was my number one for that year. This won't be number one this year, but it will be in my top 10.
Oh yeah, it's still a great series. No matter if if I have any kind of squabbles with it, I think it's still a great series. I think it's better than a lot of television, especially when it comes to horror shows.
Yeah, I will say this past few weeks have been really good because between this and Lovecraft Country, we got some really good TV.
So many great things, yeah.
And then we're also rewatching Annabelle. Oh my god,
I know, it's just
the best of the best.
Quality all around.
All right, Chris, thank you for joining me to talk about this. This was great.
No, it's always a spooky time.
Indeed it was. All right, let's say good night.
Good night.